Amen, amen. Well, it's good to be saved, isn't it? Amen. That's good to be in church, isn't it? Amen. It's good to see me, isn't it? I'll tell you what, he gets a free book. That's a good kid. All right, I want to mention one thing about the book table. Buy everything. There's some stuff there. If you pastors are interested in that book that I mentioned this morning, they're getting down. Not a lot of them there, so you may want to grab that. And then there's a table. If you see this little piece of paper, you can feel free to take one of these. And these are, I call these adrenaline pumpers. I'm upset with our Christianity that we don't even defy wickedness. You do anything contrary to the world, and somebody says that's rebellion. But the Bible talks about David and Eliezer defied the Philistines, and God wrought a great victory. And I think part of the reason we aren't having any victories is we don't even want to upset the devil and his crowd. Let me ask you this. How many people, I just want to put your hand up, how many of you have ever seen a bumper sticker? I was behind a car the other day, pagan and proud, or there'll be something about being homosexual or anything about the Democrats. But really, how many of you have been, one of those in-your-face, I don't care about God or Christianity or America. How many of you have seen a bumper sticker like that? Come on, now look around, okay? Well, then let's just give them one back. And so I call these adrenaline pumpers because they will definitely clear the arteries of the guy behind you at the traffic light. There's 45 of them out there, and if you buy all 45 of them, I'm going to be worried about you. I saw a guy bought 15 of them, and I thought, man, I want to see his car, and then I did. I think my bumper stickers are holding the fenders on, the windshield down, the trunk lid closed. But I'll just give you an idea. One of them, public education is child abuse. Trees are good for burning, animals are good for eating, environmentalists are good for nothing. If the earth is your mother, I walk on your mother. Spank your child or they may grow up to be a Democrat. Democrats are tyrants, Republicans are cowards, Jesus Christ is our only hope. And then there's a series of them, liberals were wrong. Liberals were wrong. Now listen carefully, liberals were wrong, spanking makes good children. Let me give you a thought because you usually don't get one. Where are Dr. Spock's children? Didn't they say 30, 40 years ago, if you spank kids, that makes them bad, and if we don't spank them, they'll be good? Then we've got 3 or 4 generations now unspanked. Why aren't they good? They're dope dealers, they're rapists, they're killing each other right in the school, and so spanking makes good children. Liberals were wrong, abortion is murder. Liberals were wrong, guns stop crime. Liberals were wrong, Muslims can't be trusted. Nazis murder Jews, communists murder dissenters, liberals murder babies. America, under God or underground. There's some, if you want those, these are by some of the founding fathers. The Bible is the source of liberty. Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, Thomas Jefferson is the liberals' hero. That's why I've got that right on the back of my bus. I just make those liberals eat that every time they see it. He's their guy. George Washington, it is impossible to rightly govern the world without God and the Bible. William Penn, those people who will not be governed by God will be ruled by tyrants. Again, Jefferson, the Bible makes the best people in the world. If you're wondering who that is, that's Americans. Abraham Lincoln, gold is good in its place, but loving, brave, patriotic men are better than gold. John Jay, the very first Supreme Court Chief Justice, Americans should select and prefer Christians as their rulers. And then there's one, and I think you guys know this, this church is a grandmother's church. If you're with the dance band and the Starbucks Christianity and the show up in a golf shirt and, guys, how can it be an original thought when 2,500 pastors around the country all got the same idea at the same time to have a plexiglass pulpit? When everybody has the same idea at the same time, nobody had an idea. And so they would call this your that's a grandmother's church. So I have a bumper sticker that says, you need your grandmother's church. So those are back there. They're $1 a piece. Just stimulate someone's, they'll live longer. They'll live longer because they sit behind you and I can't believe they put that in the back of the car. Just spread the love. All right. I thought I'd preach out of a book with a good, honest sounding name tonight. Go to 2 Samuel. Second Samuel. And 2 Samuel, we'll be looking through several scripture, but this is the one where we'll start. 2 Samuel chapter 13. This is during the intrigue and the tyranny of Absalom when he was trying to overthrow his own father, kill his own dad, and become king. Verse 13 says, and there came a messenger to David saying, the hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom. Let's bow our heads and talk to the Lord. Father, it's good to be saved, God. It really is. And Lord God, I'll tell you what, it's good to be still saved. Lord God, everybody here that is saved, if we could lose it, we'd have lost it by now. So sometimes, God, when we tell you we're glad we're saved, what we mean is we're glad we're still saved. We're glad that you've kept us. We're glad you put up with us. We're glad, God, that you didn't put any ifs in this salvation thing, God. Thank you so much. Now, God, I pray that you will deliver the message to your people, accomplish your purpose in each life represented. And God, I think I've already been edified. I mean, I really, as a Christian, what I heard this morning, what I heard just now, I have been edified. But now, God, I pray that we will then, after being edified, go out and glorify thee. In Jesus Christ's name we pray, amen. We see them all the places. You see bumper stickers, support our troops, support our troops, support our troops. You remember the first Gulf War? During the first Gulf War, it was about 91. We were out west. We do, a year and a half east, year and a half west. We were in the west. And we took our family to the White Sands, New Mexico. Now not the missile testing range. Boys, go stand out on the X. I'm going to get the picture. Yeah, stay there a little longer. Anyway, but we went to the White Sands. It's a national park, whatever it is, But if you've ever been there, it's an amazing place. These sand dunes are probably 30 feet high, and they've got these roads that go through them. And they're just, they dig these roads out, and it's as cold as snow, white as snow. Boys picked up a piece of cardboard somewhere. We're all riding down these sand dunes. And then I saw my oldest son. Now, he'll hate me for this, so if this is taped, don't send it to him. No, send it to him. Send it to him, John. I love you, son. Anyway, so the sides of these dunes are huge. They're easily like this wall, and they're a pretty steep angle. And we saw our oldest son at that time. And I don't know how old he was, but he was our oldest son, and he somehow managed to stay that way. I thought about killing him and let Nate take over. Anyway, and he's walking. He's walking in this sand, and we see him walking. And then he walks over here and he's walking. And he's walking, and he's obviously spelling something out. And we got in our car to leave, and there, it was the nicest thing. On the side of that sand dune, he had spelled out, support our troops. Taught him ourselves, we did. Not gonna let a public school teacher ruin my kid when I can do it myself. My wife taught my boys, but I taught them spelling so they'd get it writ. And we see it all the time, support our troops, support our troops. That's what we're talking about tonight, support our troops. Support our troops. I am for our troops. I personally believe that the war we have going on over there shouldn't be going on over there by now. It should have been long done. We have the greatest military in the world. We have the sorriest leadership in the world. We really do. I don't care, Democrat or Republican. George Bush has not tried to win that war. Look, the object of a war is to break the spirit of your enemy, and you can't punch somebody and say, I'm sorry, punch him and say, I'm sorry, punch him and say, I'm sorry. And when you drop bombs on the country, go, no, we don't mean any, we're not going to bother your electric, and we're not going to bother your plumbing, and this is really not against you. It's just there's only about 8 guys in your country we don't like, You just, look, we beat 2 serious countries. The Germans and the Japanese were genuine fighters and genuine warriors, and I don't even know if there is such a thing as an Arab warrior, And they say, well, how come we can't get peace? Because we never broke their will. You can't break somebody's will and apologize to them. And so I think that that war over there should have been over. We should have bombed them until they crawled out of the rubble, begged us to stop, and then put that Tommy Franks in Baghdad running the place like MacArthur ran Japan, and send in the missionaries. Okay? And that never did happen. It never will happen. We're never going to break their will. So all I can do is support the troops. I am for the troops. I pray for them. I've got several soldiers and Marines and things like that, guys over there that I pray for every day. I pray for guys from here that are over there. I pray for them every day. And so I'm supporting our troops. I do it. If I could designate, I like designated offerings. I wish there was designated taxes. If you could designate your tax, every dollar I send would be buying bullets and bombs and hand grenades. I'm sorry, them homeless folks would never get nothing. They wouldn't get us unless, well, bullets and bombs. No, anyway. But those aren't the troops that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. I'm going to talk to you about our troops. We call ourselves an army, and we say that we're serving our God and that we're in the army for the Lord and all those other things. And I really feel sorry for God. I do. I feel sorry for God. I equate Christianity to this. If you've ever had a new house built, could you imagine you got a brand new house, you're having a brand new house built, and everybody that's working on it is 6 years old? And every day you go out there, and one kid is playing with his Matchbox cars on the sand, and another guy sitting over here, why aren't you working? Well, my stomach hurts. Well, where's so-and-so? Oh, he didn't want to come today. Well, why aren't you working? Because I don't want to work with him. I don't like him. And you're trying to get a house built, and you've got these 6-year-olds. And here's God. We call this the Great Commission, and you know who's got doing it? Us. If that don't make you feel sorry for God, I don't know what you're doing. And if you remember this, if you remember early on in this second Gulf War, a traitorous Muslim in our army threw a hand grenade into a bunch of American troops, killed, I think, 2 of them, and wounded 11. And we talk about that guy like he's a bad guy. I don't know. I think he's kind of an example of Baptists. We say something that's not true. We say this flippantly about ourselves. We say it's not true. We say we're the only army that shoots its own wounded. That's not true at all. We're the only army that makes our own wounded. We take somebody that's doing perfectly fine and shoot him in the back. We take a ministry, and if it happens to be a ministry that has no effect on me whatsoever and that won't cost me anything, and if I don't like the guy that's running it, then it's open season. I'm allowed to destroy him. And most of our warfare doesn't go against the devil's crowd. It goes against our own crowd. And here's God trying to win a war. So I'm going to talk to you because there are several factions, and this is not, when I say factions, I'm not talking about groups against each other. I am talking about this army that we're going to look at here. This group that had one goal in mind, and that's what we're supposed to have, correct? One goal in mind. And this group that had one goal in mind, there were different guys. I want to show you something. How many men in here were in the military? Well, just how many guys were in the military? Would you stand up? Could you stand up? And ladies, if you were to, I don't want to slight you, ladies. Okay, now, don't get me wrong, but if you were, now I consider frontline combat. I'm talking about if you were in infantry, if you were in armor, if you were not flying a transport, but flying a fighter or a bomber. If you were in a frontline unit, I want you to sit down. If you were engaged in combat. All right, now, look at the guys that are still standing that weren't engaged in combat. Oh, they weren't doing nothing. The guys that just sat down are glad they had these guys. These guys right here, they were armors. Some of them were medics. Some of them saw to it that their ammunition and food got to them. You think that's not important? Right. You can sit down, guys. Thank you very much. All I'm saying is that when we talk about an army, we want everybody to be the guy that goes out and throws himself on the sword. We want everybody to be a pawn. We want everybody to be the frontline guy. Everybody has to be out there on a street corner. Everybody has to be out there engaging the Roman Catholics. Everybody's got to be doing the same thing. You know what you got? Here's what you need to be doing. You need to be doing what I'm doing, the way I'm doing it, when I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. And if you're not, you're just not serving God. So then I'm going to cut your throat in the name of Jesus. And so we're just going to look at some of the groups that are here that are represented. I'll try to loosely apply some typology here to what these guys did and what their jobs were, and I may be accurate, and you can apply it the way you want. First thing we have David, and David was the king, correct? The two prime people here are David the good guy, Absalom the bad guy. David was the king, and Absalom wanted to kill him and take his throne. You ever read anything like that in the Bible? You know, like I shall ascend, I will ascend, I will sit on the sides of the north. And here is David, and David would be a type of God. He would be a type of the Lord. And obviously Absalom would be a type of the devil. And Absalom goes out there, and guys, listen, some of you may have done this. You church members, you know, you might be a church member here, you might be a church member someplace else, and you start glad handing and having people over for supper so that you can win people to your side. I talked with a guy who should have known better. Bible college graduate, pastored a church before, and boy, you know, he's into a church, and I'll tell you what his pastor did. I'll tell you exactly what his pastor did. Upset him. You say, well, what did he do? No, that's all it takes. You know, I don't marry people anymore because I'm an evangelist. If I ever pastor again, if I go back to marrying people, I'm going to write the vows. And in that thing about till death do us part, I'm going to change that till they make me real mad. Because that's the truth. Right? That's the truth. You sit there and say till death do us part. No, you leave it as soon as they make you real mad. The fortitude that Brother Paisley's mother had isn't found anymore. And us preachers and us Christians, I hear people say this all the time. I love my pastor. You love him until he makes you mad. And suddenly he becomes the Antichrist, and it's open season on him. And that is the truth. I tell people this all the time. The unpardonable sin is to disagree with me. I don't mean disagree with Sam Gipp. I mean disagree with you. The sin unto death is cross me, I'll kill you. You won't use a gun, you use a telephone. You won't gossip, you'll spread a prayer request. But boy, we can, in the name of prayer, oh no, I'm just telling you this so that you can better pray about it. I talked to a guy that knew better. There's church probably going to split. I don't even know if the church can be salvaged. I don't even know. And the guy became an Absalom. And I'm telling you, and once you become an Absalom, you'll be amazed at how many little things. I mean, that list, you know, it's like he didn't let you be a Sunday school teacher, some major Bible doctrine, a problem like that. But once you're ticked, then it's everything. I mean, it is every little thing. And, you know, he has to park here. I don't like him parking there. And you know, why does he even get a parking space? I mean, just anything there is, and we just rip them apart. That was Absalom. And you better get it straight. That is Absalom. Right. I learned a lesson. I was lost, and I learned a spiritual lesson. It was 1968, and if you remember, the hippies were burning Bank of America buildings out in California. And I came home one time, and I've always been kind of a news junkie. I've always been interested in the news and what's going on. And I came home, and they're burning these Bank of America buildings, and they interviewed this hippie that was burning a building. Hey, guys, when you set fire to a building and get interviewed instead of arrested, the country has turned the wrong corner. And they asked this hippie, they said, how come you're burning these buildings? And he said, we're going to build a new country, but we got to burn the old one down first. I learned a great spiritual truth there. You know what I learned? Any hippie can burn a building. It doesn't take a whole lot of talent to set fire to a building. Can I ask you a question? You ever seen a building that a hippie built? You find me one, I'm still not sure I want to go in it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you did the floors yourself. Yeah, man, it's a groove. You got a new building right here, and I know with fire codes and everything else, but look, you could give a sixth grader a pack of matches, and he could turn this thing into a gutted, blackened, smoke damaged, flame destroyed Hulk by this time tomorrow night, correct? Could a sixth grader build it? Come on, could a sixth grader build this building? Not in your life, and not overnight. And I learned this: destruction is easy. And then I got to the Bible, and guess what? I found out who is called the destroyer. So when I find somebody who's preoccupied with tearing something apart, I know who he's working for. And of course, I know he says it's Jesus Christ, but who doesn't? I mean, Muslims say God told them to blow people up. We all kill people in the name of God. But I'm telling you, I learned a long time ago that anybody can burn a building. I don't want to stand before the Lord today and or someday and have him say, "Did you love me?" Oh, yeah. Well, how could you doubt it? Look at that church I split. Look at that guy I ran out of the ministry. Look at that church there. I got 5 families out of that place, man. They haven't gotten back into church since then, but hey, I got them away from that guy. Hey, you question me? Look at the blood on my hands. How could you wonder? And it's all the blood of the brethren. And we do it to each other. We don't, look, guys, I'm telling you, come on, you pastors, you know this is true. If I asked testimonies, you pastors, if I said, who are the people that gave you the greatest grief and the greatest trouble? And it usually would not be the lost world. And it would be somebody that was saved. It would be somebody that loved you. You know, people ask me about, is it hard to be in evangelism? And I said, no, it's like being on vacation all year long. I kill those people. And I tell people it's difficult in 2 areas. It's very hard physically. You're always running, always running. We'll leave here. And we flew in from Canada, I think. We flew 6.5 hours in from Canada. And Brother Benson picked us up at the airport and took us to my bus. And within 30 minutes of getting to the bus, we were on the road and drove another 6.5 hours. And got in sometime late at night. And we'll leave here Friday. Get back Friday night, hook up Saturday, and take off for several hundred miles. It is very difficult physically, and it is very difficult spiritually. And don't get me wrong, preachers, but I can't wait till Saturday night to get right with God. I believe you ought to get right every time you preach, and if you don't preach but Wednesday and Sunday, you can linger a couple of days. But I'll tell you, I tell you what it is not. I'll tell you what's not tough about evangelism. And you preachers, you pastors, you go out and you win a family to the Lord. You get their son out of jail. You keep their daughter from marrying some bum. You keep this family from splitting up, and they say, "Man, I love you. Oh, preacher, you've been so good to us. You've helped us so much. Where would we be without you? And we'll always be behind you." And they love you until you make them mad. And the people that say they love you, they'll walk out the door and they will take 5 or 6 families with them. I could take you to a little town where a man got mad at his pastor. Young pastor, older fella, saved longer than the pastor was, got mad at the preacher, left the church, and goes around that town, and he doesn't go around giving his side of the story, because at least when you give your side of the story, you could be legitimately a little one-sided. He makes up lies. He knows he's lying. He makes them up. He will do anything to keep anybody from going to that pastor's church. That pastor saw him downtown one time and said, "Hey, I was talking to some guy and he said, you said this about our church and about me." And he said, "Yeah, I did." He said, but you know that never even happened. That's not even true. You made that up. He goes, "Yeah, I did." He goes, "I lied." He goes, I'll say anything and I'll do anything to keep anybody from coming to your church. If you think that's bad, wait till you hear what I tell them next. You know who that guy is? His father. It's the pastor's father. How could a father do that to his son? It's real simple. Son made him mad. Look, David was the king, and the usurper and the rebel was the guy that got in behind him and badmouthed him. Now, I'm going to tell you something, guys. If your mouth has badmouthed God's people, I don't care who you are, I don't care how you defend it, and I don't care how you say it, you have been working. At that moment, you were working for the devil. And if you rip on somebody's ministry just because you don't like them, just because they're not in our crowd, right? Come on. They're not Bible believers like we're Bible believers. They're not with us on every single doctrine. I know there's people out there that aren't in the Bible like they need to be, but I got news for you, pal. There's some guys that are seeing to it that the ammunition gets out to the front lines who couldn't load the weapon. But you need that guy. And I say this, there's just some folks you don't like. I'm talking about saved, believe the book, even love the Lord, you just don't like them. It's just personalities. That's like me and everybody. I don't like any of you. You know that? In fact, let me tell you. Oh, no. But you know how I describe those people? I said they're just some folks you're not going to go get burgers with. They're just some people you just don't feel like sitting in Burger King, sitting across the table from them and saying, how are things going? You just don't care. That's the truth. I hear people say, well, we just can't get along. I said, then don't try. The Bible never said we have to like each other. Aren't you glad? It said we have to love each other. So what does that mean? Well, forget that song, you always hurt the one you love. You don't hurt the one you love. You don't stab them in the back. You don't blow them up. You don't burn them. And so the guy that was doing the injuring was doing it with his what? His mouth. And we're the guys that shoot our mouths off by believing the book. You know the book that says, by thy words thou shalt be justified, by thy words thou shalt be condemned? That book that says we're going to give an account of every idle word. I was talking to a church member one time, and he was talking to me about his pastor. His pastor was wrong. He believed, this guy believed the King James Bible is the Word of God. His pastor did not. Used an NIV. His pastor's wrong. Right? You better believe it. And he was telling me about some things he's upset about his pastor. And it was stuff like he thought they should redo the Sunday school, and the pastor wanted to get a new piano because it would look nice, and so they ended up getting a new piano. You know, those doctrinal problems. And to be very honest, it was judgment calls. But guess what? The pastor was the judge, and he wanted the piano. Well, that's not fair. Oh, well, nobody asked me what I thought. Nobody cared what you thought. And this guy is just ripping and ripping on his, just ragging, actually not just on his pastor. And you know what he noticed? See, he thought when he started out by letting me know his pastor didn't believe the King James Bible, that I would jump on and be on against his pastor and everything. And to be very honest, I think probably the pastor shouldn't have got the piano, hearing from this guy, and probably should have taken care of whatever else it was. But it was the preacher's call. It was not my business at all. I'm not even a member of the church, and it really isn't this guy's call. And when he saw this, when he saw that I wasn't jumping on his side and well, that's how these guys are, you know. Yeah, that's how they are, brother. You got to stand up. You got to save that church from that guy right there. When I didn't do that, he said this. And you know, he spends an awful lot of time in that church with the secretary. He says he spends an awful lot of time alone in the church with the secretary. Now, here's what he doesn't know. This is a King James Bible believer, and I take a stand with him even today against somebody who doesn't believe the book. What he doesn't know is that he is this far from me walking into my house before cell phones. I'm going to get his pastor's phone number. I'm going to call him and tell him exactly what this guy said. I said, wait just a second. I said, are you now accusing your pastor of committing adultery with the secretary? You know what he said? Oh, it was classic. It was Baptist to the core. He said, now I didn't say that. Well, no, he didn't, did he? But he did, didn't he? Come on, man. After you don't even have to be but about 7 years old, 8 years old to know how to say something without saying it. And I said, no, you didn't. But I said, that is exactly what you implied. I said, now, are you accusing your pastor of committing adultery with the secretary? He said, no. I said, then don't you ever make that statement again. I said, do you understand how easy it is for me now, if I hear your pastor's name, to say, oh, yeah, you know, I think there might be a little problem with the secretary there. And of course, that's what he wanted. That guy will answer for his words. Those words will be justified, or by his words will be justified, by his words will be condemned. And so will you. I do not want to stand in front of the Lord having used my mouth to rip on the brother. I'll tell you guys this. I will confess this or admit it. It was about 30 years ago. 30 years ago, I wrote a letter to a preacher. You'd know his name. About a preacher, you'd know his name. And probably nobody you just thought of either. But I wrote a letter to a preacher, and these two guys were good friends. They were good friends. But believe it or not, even though they were good friends, one of them believed something doctrinally that was a little nutso, and the other one was right. And so I wrote the guy that was right about the guy, his buddy, and I said, you know, you may not realize, but here's what he believes. And it was this messed up doctrine. I don't think that letter was in the mail a day or two before God smote my heart. And my second letter was probably in the mail before he got the first one. And the second letter said, I am so sorry for what I wrote to you in the first letter. I am so sorry. I never should have said that, and I am so sorry. The Bible says God hates somebody that sows discord among brethren. That is exactly what I was doing. I did that once. It's the only letter like that I ever wrote. Boy, if you don't write the first one, you don't have to write the second one. You know how many people I've talked to and they said, oh man, I realize what I said now is bad. What do I do about it? I said, how do you get the words back? How can you follow the trail? How can you get the words back? And so I'm telling you tonight that David here is a type of God and Absalom is a type of the devil, and you better decide whose side you want to be on. Really, you just need to say, whose side am I on? And if you're on God's side, then you need to decide if somebody that you hear something bad about is on God's side or not. And we are so quick to decide somebody is the devil's side if they just do anything or say anything we don't like. Think of this. Think of some preacher that you don't like. Now, come on, be honest. There is somebody that you don't like. And think of some preacher that you don't like. Maybe you don't even think he should be in the ministry. And when we get to heaven, you know what you're going to do? You're going to mention that guy's name. And somebody's going to go, that guy led me to the Lord. And somebody else will say, that guy kept our marriage together. Yep. Another guy will say, we were out of church. That guy got us back in. You say, yeah, but didn't what I hear bad about him? Wasn't it true? Sure, it was true. You guys that were in the military that you stood up, I'll bet you when you were in the military, you absolutely just loved every guy you worked with in the military. I'll bet you just thought they were just the greatest, but you all just agreed. You never had any personal problems. There were never any scuffles. You know, you have two guys in a foxhole and they'll hate each other, buddy, but when one of them gets wounded, the other guy give his life for him. And we can't get that down. You better decide whose side you're on. I've decided whose side I'm on. And I want to be on God's side. And you know what that means? That means I am not, by the grace of God, I am not going to hurt a preacher, even a preacher that doesn't believe what I believe, even a preacher I don't like. I mean, there's ministries, look, I will never be inside those churches. I will never meet. There's preachers I won't even meet. You say, why? Because I know whose side they're on. And we're so quick. I mean, brother, we are so quick. We have very broad parameters for the devil's crowd. They don't like me. I don't like them. That's devil's crowd. And that isn't right. So, and that wasn't all even in my notes, so you must have needed that. I want you to look at chapter 10. The first guy we have here is Joab. I know we looked at David, but David is, I say, David is a type of God. And we're going to look at Joab. I like Joab. Look what it says in verse Oh, I like this. I just like this stuff here. Let's start about verse 9. This is when Joab found out that he was surrounded. Then Joab saw that the front of the battle was against him before and behind. When he did. He chose of all the choice men of Israel and put them in array against the Syrians. And the rest of the people he delivered into the hand of Abishai, his brother, that he might put them in array against the children of Ammon. So Joab had kind of the special forces guys. He had a smaller number of elite, really vicious fighters. And his brother, Abishai, had a greater number of, not cowards, but he just had a greater number of maybe lesser fighters. And they were facing the children of Ammon. And I like the way he thinks. And he said, if the Syrians be too strong for me, then thou shalt help me. And if the children of Ammon be too strong for thee, then I will come and help thee. You know what verse is missing in the Bible? The one right after that where Abishai says, well, what if the Syrians are too strong for you and the Ammonites are too strong for me? And about that time, Job will say, well, in that case, brother, that was me that took your pocket knife when you were 8. This guy had no plan for surrender. He had no plan whatsoever. You ought to be prepared. He was not prepared. He was not prepared to lose. You say, what happens? Well, what happens? Then they die. Then they die. And then he says, one of the greatest lines in the Bible, verse 12, be of good courage and let us play the men for our people and for the cities of our God and the Lord do that which seemeth him good. Joab was a warrior. Joab was a fighter. Joab was a soldier. I'm going to tell you my declaration on Joab. I don't even care if you agree with it or not. He was a good man. He was a good man. Boy, you say Joab here. Not very many amens. You won't get very many amens on Joab from preachers, from pastors. Joab is a type of the good guy that stabbed the pastor in the back. That's how they like to say, had his own agenda. Hey, look, I'll tell you something, buddy. There isn't a guy here in a fight wouldn't want a Joab. You know what you do? You be bad-mouthing Joab, but all of a sudden you see some Syrians coming and you're going, oh, no, what are we going to do? And somebody says, hey, here comes Joab. Oh, glory, hey, Joab, oh, buddy, hey, look who's coming. Isn't that the truth? We all want a Joab. I'm going to tell you about things I like about Joab. He was brave. That's brave. That's brave. That's not foolish. That's not crazy. That is just a guy. You know something? Dying isn't even a bother to him. That's what soldiers do. You know what you do as a soldier? One of two things, live or die. So he says, okay, we go to war, we live. If we win, we live. If we lose, we die. Short end of story. Short movie. And that's just how it is. And that's how Joab was. You don't find this guy worrying about anything. You don't find him whining, oh man, he always puts me in the tough part. Oh man, I can't believe it. Boy, David has really hung me out to dry enough times. That's his job. He's a soldier. You go out and kill people. That's what you do. And I like him because I believe that he was brave. I'll tell you why else I like him. You talk about loyalty, guys. You aren't going to find anybody more loyal than Joab. So what do you mean? He never told anybody about Uriah and Bathsheba. We know about David and Bathsheba because the Bible tells us that in the next chapter. And you got to figure that Joab had enough sense for 1 and 1 to become 2. I mean, all right, be Joab for a second, guys. Remember I told you, get in the scene. You're Joab. You get word from David. David wants Uriah the Hittite to go back to Jerusalem and report on the war. Okay, boy, Uriah's one of my best men. He's a good man. Uriah comes back a few days later, special report from the king. Joab, okay, put Uriah in the forefront of the battle, withdraw from him, make see to it that he dies. Okay, Uriah, good enough, thank you. Next day they got a battle, says, send Uriah around this, he'll get killed. Just send Uriah and do what I tell you to do. Uriah gets the orders. Hey, the king wants you, or Joab wants you to go out there and shoot, get up there next to the wall to shoot. He says, we'll get killed. He says, that's what he wants you to do. Okay, that's what we'll do. He gets killed. And Joab's going, man, why did he want Uriah dead? It's obvious David wanted Uriah dead. Why did he want Uriah dead? He comes back to Jerusalem and everybody says, hey, what's the celebration? Oh, didn't you hear? King David got married. No kidding, who did he marry? Oh, Bathsheba, Uriah's widow. You may not know this, guys, but even in the Old Testament, they had light bulbs. And Joab just went on. And he said, he was seeing Uriah's wife when Uriah was alive. And he just had me murder him for him. And he never told anybody. Isn't that funny? We talk about him not being loyal. That's pretty loyal. I wonder how loyal we are to each other. We say, well, preacher, should we hide sin? Yep. Bible says a good man will pass over some transgression. Love will pass over transgression. You know what we've done? The news media has made it so that we demand perfection from everybody. And I got news for you, bucko. You aren't perfect. And in case you were wondering, I'm not perfect. And I love your pastor, and I think he's a great man. And I'm telling you, he's not perfect. And when we see some imperfection, when we see something that makes us mad, when we see, hey, I mean, they might be legitimately wrong. I give this illustration. There was this fellow went to this tough little steel town, eked out this little church, had about 30 people. They're meeting. I mean, this guy was just as tough as nails, and he got this church going where some guys just have a hard time getting it going. And then they had a church crisis. You know what they want to do? Hang up a picture. They want to hang up a picture about that big. And when the preacher wanted to hang up the picture, somebody else thought they should put it over here, and he's going to put it over here. And somebody else said, well, no, we should put it, do we even need that picture? Now it became a committee thing. You know what this preacher did? He got so mad, he's holding his picture, and he slams this thing, shatters the glass, splinters the frame, destroys the picture, and then he turned beet red, and he went up one side, these guys down the other. And that was the end of it. That was the end of it. You say, well, you think he should have done that? No, I don't. You think he was wrong? Probably. He might not have been wrong, but, he probably should have controlled his temper. Yeah. Does that make him a bad man? Or you're saying is we should kill him because he wasn't perfect? What if I told you this? What if I told you that, look, here's what you need to establish, and this is kind of hard to do because we count ourselves as the authority. We count, if I like him, he's good, and if I don't like him, he's bad. It doesn't matter what they do. I had a man come to me one time, and he said, let me tell you about my pastor. He said, I've got to ask you this. He said, I'm asking. He's not gossiping. He said, I got to ask you this. And I said, what? And he told me something about his pastor, and it was not a good thing, and it was a sin. Not adultery, nothing like that, not murder, but it was something he shouldn't have done. And he said, what do you think I should do? He said, should I tell the church, bring it before the church, or should I not? And I said, well, you've got one thing to decide. He said, what is it? I said, you tell me, is your pastor a good man? Do you think your pastor is a good man who just did something bad? Did something he shouldn't have done? Or is your pastor really a bad man who just occasionally does something good? He said, oh, he's a good man. I said, well, the gun's in your hand. He never said anything. Oh, hiding sin, huh? Yep. And what was the result of that? Church growing, man still in the ministry, church still doing good, church building big building, and I don't think that pastor's ever going to do what he did before. He's never going to do that thing again. But somebody just chose not to kill him. We have only one punishment for all crimes and all sins, off with his head. It doesn't matter what they do, it's let's kill him. I'm telling you, Joab was loyal. He never told anybody about Uriah the Hittite. We only know about it. You can't find any evidence that anybody in Israel knew about Uriah the Hittite. God talks about it. We know about it. You can't find it in there. I'll tell you what else. Look at this. Look at chapter 12. You want loyalty? Even after this, even right when this was fresh about the death of Uriah, Look at what it says in verse 26. And Joab fought against Rabbah of the children of Ammon and took the royal city. And Joab sent messengers to David and said, I have fought against Rabbah and have taken the city of waters. Now, therefore, gather the rest of the people together and encamp against the city and take it, lest I take the city and it be called after my name. Yeah. This is when Uriah is still warm in the grave, guys. And he sends word to David, listen, you need to get the guys over here. This thing's about to fall. One good attack and it's fallen. Get some guys over here, you make that attack, the place will fold up, and they'll be marching the streets of Jerusalem talking about what a great conqueror you are. And if you don't do that, then I'm going to take it, and they're going to talk about me. So I thought he was a soldier. He's interested in winning. He's not interested in somebody patting him on the back. Oh, that's pretty good, don't you think? He'd rather have this adultering murderer get credit for it. And you got to admit it. David didn't even take the city. Joab done it and then handed it to him on a plate. And David came down there and marched in the city. Everybody said, whoa, that David, brother, ever since Goliath, man, he's just been on a roll. And then somebody talking to Joab. Boy, Joab, I'll tell you, we got us a king. He is a warrior. Joab says, we sure do, brother. We sure do. He is a good man. He's a loyal man. Look at chapter 14. And you know what he does in chapter 14? This is when Absalom had killed his brother. In chapter 13, Absalom had killed his brother Amasa. And, not Amasa, Amnon. And hey, I don't think that Joab liked Absalom at all. I don't think he liked him at all. I think Joab would have taken care of this one dark night all by himself. Oh, King, I'm sorry. I heard your son rolled over in his sleep and rolled onto his knife 14 times backwards. I think Joab would have taken the guy out. And when he's gone, you know what I think Joab said? Good riddance. We don't need that kind of trash around here. And Joab was right. But you know what he saw? He saw his king's grief. And he sets up this whole elaborate scheme to get David to let Absalom come back. He was for David against his own better judgment. And you want loyalty? You tell me that this guy wasn't loyal? And I think he got shortchanged over and over and over again by David. I really do. Oh, I think he was wrong about his rebellion there at the end, but I think the guy was something else. I'll tell you something else. Look at chapter 18. He put Israel, and this might have been a problem for him, but he put Israel above David, which is the way it's supposed to be. I love this country, but you know what? Our country is not George Bush, and it's not Bill Clinton, and it's not whoever's going to be sitting in the White House after January of 09. Our Constitution, our country is defined by the Constitution, and we're for our country. And when the word went out, no, I don't want anybody to hurt Absalom. Joab says, that boy needs to die. That kid needs to die. He needs to go. And when the guy comes and says, hey, I saw Absalom hanging in a tree. And he says, would you kill him? Oh, no. Oh, if I killed him, you heard the king, you'd kill me. And Joab's probably thinking, yeah, I would. Yeah, if you killed him, the king would say, hey, he killed my son, kill him. I'd kill you. He would have. I think Joab would have killed that sucker in a heartbeat. I don't think he would have done it then. He said, good job. And they said, hey, this guy killed your son. You killed him, but Joab killed him. Oh, bye. I think he'd have done it, but he went there and did it. Say, why did he do that? Because he knew if Absalom lived, he'd be reoccurring problems to Israel. And he just may have seen his king David on the wane, and he wasn't sure that that David was going to be able to win the next time, and Israel was going to suffer for it. I think he should have killed Absalom. That's exactly what I think. You say, but he went against king's word. Yep. But it was the wrong word. It was tainted by his own personal feelings. Yeah, but you still ought to obey. Yeah, well, I guess some of us aren't just as loyal as you. And then look at chapter 19. He gave David what we call screaming reaming. Because you know what happens when he hears that Absalom's dead? David's over there going, oh, Absalom, my son, oh, Absalom. And the people of Israel who just won a great victory are stealing back in like a bunch of thieves. And look at this, man. I mean, this is, you talk about talking to him like a Dutch uncle. He's actually a Dutch cousin. Look at verse 4. But the king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, oh, my son Absalom, oh, Absalom, my son, my son. That's the wrong grief, pal. That is the wrong grief. That kid should have been dead a long time ago. And Joab came into the house of the king, to the king and said, thou hast shamed. Watch how many times he says this day, you guys. Thou hast shamed this day the faces of thy servants, which this day have saved thy life, and the life of thy sons and of thy daughters, and the lives of thy wives, and the lives of thy concubines. In that thou lovest thine enemies and hatest thy friends. For thou hast declared this day that thou regardest neither princes nor servants. For this day I perceive that if Absalom had lived and all we had died this day, then it had pleased thee well. Now therefore arise. Look what he's telling him. Go forth and speak comfortably unto thy servants, for I swear by the Lord, if thou go not forth, there will not tarry one with thee this night. He's not saying you owe me an apology. He's not saying you owe the army an apology. He said your actions are turning all Israel off. You need to go out and say some comforting words to Israel so they rally behind you. He is giving David advice that is keeping David on the throne. This is a loyal man. But I know down there at the end of the line, hey, I think he was wrong about killing Amasa. I think he was wrong about killing, he got personal, didn't he? Asahel died in a war situation, and Joab had no gripe about it. But let's face it, guys, when it's our blood and it's our kin, it gets a little tougher, doesn't it? And I think he was wrong, and I know about his rebellion at the end, but I'm telling you, this was a good man who just messed up in a couple of places. And could I give you some advice? Let's not define our good men by their worst action. You got a guy, Joab, over and over and over and over and over did good, and you show me where he did wrong, and we will always define his entire life. We will write off every good thing he did for Israel, every good thing he did for David, because of the one bad thing he did. Well, then we got to get rid of Samson. And we better get rid of David. And then there's that Christ-denying Peter. I'm not even going to read those books anymore. I'm going to read something written by a guy that denied Christ. Hey, I'm talking to a bunch of people who have never denied Christ like Peter did, right? So we've got a right. I've never done as bad as him. Let's define him by his worst moment. Let's define our pastors. Let's define our preacher friends. Let's define each other by when they lose it because they just had all they could take, because they had a headache for a day or two, or because a bunch of bad things came in at one time and they just couldn't handle it and they spouted off one time, or they let their flesh get the best of them. Right. I know you've never let your flesh get the best of you. You think Abraham's a friend of God? Well, he wasn't a friend of Sarah's. Turned her over to some guys to have playtime twice. I don't think you'll ever buy a book on marriage written by Abraham. He could probably tell you something about relationships with God, but he couldn't tell you anything about a relationship with his wife. So let's define him by his worst. Let's define everybody by their worst. So we hear about a general and he committed adultery. Was he right? No, he wasn't right, but they run him out of the Air Force. And we go, well, yeah, but you know what he did? Yeah, but do we ever look at what he did good? But that doesn't count. Well, it saved Jerusalem. It saved Israel a bunch of times. And I'm going to say it again. You can badmouth Joab all you want, but everybody wishes they had one time in their life. Everybody wishes they had somebody just go out there and fight the enemy for them. Everybody wishes they'd have somebody to cover them for their mistake and their weak moment. Something they're not too proud of. You think they ever talked about it? I'll bet you words were never spoken, but I'll bet you across the room those two men's eyes met and they said everything needed to be said. David probably, without saying a word, looked over at Joab. You know what he asked him? You going to tell him? And Joab looked over at David and never said a word. You know what his eyes said? I'm going to tell him. That was enough. He never even brought it up when he was rebelling at the end. He never even brought it up then. He went to the altar and died having never told anybody. Why wouldn't he, at that point, use it as political capital? Oh, yeah, let me tell you something else, Adonijah. You never knew this, but I've known this for years. I don't know, pretty good guy. Look at chapter 15. Oh, and let me tell you who I think the Joabs are, by the way. If David is the type of the Lord, I think the Joabs are the type of the people who are doing the battle for the Lord, and I don't mean the preachers. I know we preachers like to put ourselves as the frontline guys, but hey guys, you know what battle is? Battle is where you go engage the enemy and try to take some ground away from him. And we're not all doing that. I think these guys are the guys who are out knocking heads with the world and trying to take something away from them in the name of the Lord. I think it is the David Gibbses, and I think it is the Bob Aldridges, and I think it is every legal organization, even ones that I might not like, that are standing for the Lord. And they're going out and doing battle, and they're winning. I think it is the teachers that go out and just resist the wickedness in their school. I think it's the people that go out and, hey, I think you ought to do this, guys. I think you ought to quit shooting your mouth off about the school board and go get on it. If you don't like the rules, make them. Well, yeah, but I know what your problem is. Yeah, somebody will say something ugly about you, and you know, if you can't split their church, what good is it? I think it's the people that are doing battle. Now, there are some preachers doing battle. You're going to find some preachers, they're doing battle. There are some people, there are some ministries that are engaged, fighting the evolutionist and I think that we ought to be making trouble for the devil. Most of us are making trouble for each other, but that's who I think Joab is. Look at chapter 15, look at verse 32. This is when David is on the run. He's leaving Jerusalem, and it says, and it came to pass that when David was come to the top of the mount, where he worshiped God, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat rent and earth upon his head. Unto whom David said, if thou passest on with me, then thou shalt be a burden unto me. But if thou return to the city and say unto Absalom, I will be thy servant, O king, as I have been thy father's servant hitherto, so will I now also be thy servant. Then mayest thou for me defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. So this guy turns around and goes back. He was a counselor, right? I think you ought to get on city council. I think you ought to. You know what? Listen. Now you listen to this. Support our troops, right? You got an 18-year-old kid, leaves this church, goes, joins the military. He's in Iraq or Afghanistan, and we're praying for him and supporting him and telling him he's doing a good thing, even if we don't think he ought to be over there. You get somebody in this church that says, I'm going to run for city council, and I'm going to see to it that they don't have this, they're going to get rid of the homosexual problem and try to help our schools, and we'll say, well, Christians ought not to be in politics. And we don't support them at all. We tell them they're getting into an ungodly field. You better believe, well, it's going to corrupt you. You better believe it's corrupting. Maybe they need our prayers and our support. Maybe they need the guys to get around them and say, God, I wouldn't want to go where this guy's going to go. How can we support him half a world away? Do you understand that every young man in the military today fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq, the battles they're winning ain't doing a thing for us? We're not benefiting from that. But this guy goes down and fights on the city council, and you might benefit from that, and we don't support that guy. And the reason you don't think anybody should get involved in politics is because you're afraid. I mean, why do anything for God I'd have to get off the couch and put down the remote for? I'll tell you this was in California, in the LA area. There was a church, and there was a guy on this little suburb of LA, I think it was Kansas City. That's a big city, LA. Anyway, this little suburb of LA, there's this guy in the city council, and this guy absolutely atheist, hates God, hates the Bible, hates Christians, and does everything he can legally to throttle the gospel and everything else. And there's this woman. Ladies, you know what? If you want to nag, why don't you go put it to good use? I'm serious. I don't think all women are naggers. I really don't. But if you just tend to be one of those women that just, well, I just got to tell them what I think, then quit telling your husband and go down and tell city council. Well, they won't like me. Who cares? They don't like you anyway. At least let them put a name to it. And this lady would go down to these city council meetings, and here's this city council in Los Angeles. And they'd want to say, here's what we want to do. And this one would go, let me say something. And it's going, oh, her. And I mean, she would stand up in these council meetings, and her and this councilman would just go head to head. And she was just ruining his day. You know what her husband did? Her husband, unbeknownst to her, put out the word the next council election she was running. And she got voted onto the city council with the atheists. Now this guy ain't looking out here and seeing her. He's looking over here and seeing her. And now he's got to listen to her. You say, well, how long did that last? About a year. You know, it's one of them things where they're 3-year things and it's every year's election. They're all staggered. And when his election came up, he chose not to run again. And I got news for you, pal. That woman did more than most men for the Lord. So, lady, if you want to gripe about something, go down to city council, go down to the Board of Education. I'm just going to tell you men right now. And you're going to teach this sex education. We're going to look at the mess we got. I mean, just unload your wagon, honey. Go on a bad day. Go when you got a headache. Go when you're mad at your husband. Besides, if you do this, I'm going to scratch your eyes out. Hushai was a counselor. You know that what he did, Joab couldn't do? You know what he did, Abishai couldn't do? You know there wasn't a warrior in Israel could do what he did? Ahithophel said, let's go get him now. Go tonight. Get your father and kill him tonight. And Absalom says, here's what Ahithophel says. What do you think? And Hushai says, man, that's good advice. If he wants to win, he needs to go after David right now before David gets away and kill him. He goes, yeah, that's not a good idea. Why? Well, you know, your dad is a real man of war, and he knows what Ahithophel's going to say. And he's probably hiding, even right now, he's off someplace else, and your guys are going to fall on the armies of Israel, and there's going to be a war, and word's going to come back that you lost. And Absalom goes, well, that sure sounds like good advice, but yeah, you know, you make sense. Yeah, yours is better. And not only did he thwart the counsel of Ahithophel, Ahithophel went and killed himself. Eliminated his counsel permanently. Really did. But Hushai didn't do anything with a sword. He didn't do anything with a shield. This guy probably couldn't run from here to the back of the building and back. He's probably an old guy. David said, if you come with me, you're so frail, man, you'll be a burden to me. This guy couldn't run from here to the back of the auditorium and back without getting winded. But he did something nobody else could do. I mean, let's support the people that are doing things that we can't do. Let's support people that are doing things that we may not agree with. How about doing some of those things? How about putting yourself in the middle of something? Guys, they're not burning our houses down yet. They're not putting us in jail yet for being Christians. You're going to have to take a stand someday. Why don't you take a stand while you can still take a stand and the police force is on your side? Look at verse 35. Very next verse. Look what he says. And hast thou not there with thee Zadok and Abiathar the priests? Therefore it shall be that what things soever thou shalt hear out of the king's house, then thou shalt tell it to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Well, I know we're not priests, but the priest was the guy that was associated with God, correct? All right, aren't we preachers the guys that are associated with God? You know what we don't like? You guys don't like that I put you three points down in the message. I didn't put you out there with gold braid on your shoulders and a bunch of medals on your chest like you're the warriors. Guys, it's because we're not the warriors. But we are the men of God. And those warriors need the men of God. And I'll tell you, church, you need the men of God. And the Bible says the day is going to come when they will not endure sound doctrine. You know what I'm seeing more and more? And you can understand it because it's me. I'm having people don't like what I say, get up and walk out. They never used to walk out. They used to just sit there and steam. Now they get up and walk out. I've had several of them just get up and walk out. You say, why? This contemporary thing. They don't have to listen to anybody say anything they don't like. Oh, who does he think he is? And that's exactly how you'll think when me or your pastor or one of these speakers or some visiting preacher comes in and says something you don't like. And all it's got to be is something against your sports team or your favorite TV program, you know, the doctrinal stuff. But these were the men of God. There they were. There were a couple of them there. And they were right there. All right, support them. You know how you ought to support your preachers? In 1 Kings chapter 17, when everything went south and there was a drought in Israel, that lady took care of Elijah. That widow lady took care of Elijah. And he had to be a Baptist preacher. I'm telling you, Elijah had to be a Baptist preacher. You know how I know? He goes there and he says to this, now think about it. Look at the passage. God says, you go over there. No, don't look at it now. Think about it in your head. And if you don't know it's there, it's in 1 Kings chapter 17. Read it someday. It's in the Bible. And the Lord says, go over there. There's a widow woman there, and I told her to take care of you. And when he shows up, she don't say, oh, you're the guy that God told me to take care of. She's never even aware she's been told to it. She's never even aware that she's supposed to take care of Elijah, and God says, I told her to take care of you. God told her spirit, and she wasn't even aware consciously that she's supposed to take care of him. You say, why are you telling us that? Because you'll go, well, I just don't feel led. Well, if I had a gun, you'd feel led. And I tell you how I know Elijah's a Baptist preacher. He says, what are you doing? She says, oh, I've got only a little meal left in the barrel, and just picking up a couple of sticks, and I'm going to bake a last meal for me and my son, and we're going to die. And Elijah says, well, okay, do that, but give me a cake first. And then go die. And is that not a Baptist preacher? Is that not Baptist doctrine? Yeah, okay, that's a good idea. You want to die, but feed me first. If you're going to die, it's not doing you any good anyway. And that lady took care of him, and God took care of her. You know something, guys? If Y2K had been true, all of you guys stocking up the freeze-dried pizza should have been doing it to take care of your preacher. I'm not talking about just this church. You better see to it, if hard times ever come to this country, if you're a church member, I'm not talking about a member here because there's other church members from other churches. But if hard times ever come to this church, or ever come to this country, you better see to it that you've got some food put away to take care of your pastor. You say, why? Because he's a man of God. Oh, you said that because you're a preacher. I'm not a pastor. I'm not asking anybody to save anything for me. I said, you're pastor, didn't I? I didn't say the evangelist. I don't see anybody saving anything for me. I don't have a group of people. I don't have a flock. But these pastors do. And you better see to it that they're taken care of. Look at the next two guys. Look at verse 36. Behold, they have there with them their two sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abithar's son, and by them ye shall send unto me everything that ye hear. You know what we call Ahimaaz and Jonathan? We call them gophers. You know what gopher is? Hey, will you go for this? Hey kid, will you go for the burgers? We're the real workers. We got to get something done. Will you just go for the workers? Go get the food. You young guys, you know what you got to be? Gophers. That's right. You say, well, that isn't fair. Wait a minute. You got a skilled carpenter. He's doing miter cuts on door trim, and lunchtime is coming, and you're lucky to hold a shovel at the right end. You go get the burgers and let him accomplish his work. And someday you'll be a skilled carpenter and somebody will go get your burgers. You know, a lot of our young men, they go to Bible college and they hear about these preachers and their church buys them a new car every 3 years and their church takes care of their groceries in their church and they go, whoa, this is for me. And they can't understand why 6 months into their pastorate and they've already bought the new car and the house and 5 years supply of groceries and now everybody's griping, They just don't know how to take care of God's man. Well, you're not there yet, bucko. You're not there yet. I pulled into a church not long ago. My bus was dirty. I don't like my bus to be dirty. I just don't like to be dirty. You say, oh, you worship it? No, I worship the God that gave it to me. I tell people I don't own it, but I know the owner, and one of these days I'm going to ask him for another one, and he's going to check my record on how I took care of this one. And I want him to be pleased, so I'm washing his. And I wash my bus, and it's about a 3-hour job. And quite often it puts me on my back in bed for about a day or two afterwards. But it needed clean. It is 93 degrees, brother, and I can't tell you how many times I've pulled into town, drive all day, pull in on Saturday, and wash the bus because it's dirty and it needs clean, and I'm going to wash it. I don't ask anybody to wash my bus. And there was a young assistant pastor, and it's this generation I tell you guys about. It's this 20 to 30 generation. These guys here, I'm telling you, they're great. They're wonderful. And this 28-year-old assistant pastor says, is there anything I can do for you? I said, you up to washing a bus? He said, yeah. I said, okay. I said, I'm washing my bus. So as soon as he was helping me pull cords and put out hoses, and I said, as soon as we get done, I said, I'm washing the bus. And I said, if you want to stick around, I said, you can help me. Man, if I could have some help, that would really be nice. He said, no, I'll wash myself. He said, you go work. He washed my bus. Man, I can't tell you something. It is like going to the dentist and having a root canal without Novocaine, letting somebody else do my work. I hear him walking up on my roof to wash the roof. You got to wash the roof. And he's walking up on the roof, and I'm thinking, God, I should be doing that. So you know what I do? I go to work. You say, why? I get working on a book. You know why? Because this kid is doing this, so I'm supposed to be getting some work done. I'm going to make sure his time is not wasted. Sunday, I go out to dinner with the preacher. I come back, and my awning is, the wind got underneath it and flipped it clear up on top of the bus, ripped it right out of the bus, bent the arm up. I go up on top, hand it down to my wife. I'm looking, the wind came up. We're trying to roll this thing up, and we look like Mary Poppins hanging onto an umbrella. Chim, chimmery, chim, chim. I said, whoa. I don't know if it was prayer, but after about 15 minutes, I said, we could use a break in the wind. In Jesus' name. I said, man, and that's what happened, see. I told Kathy, I said, man, I'm going to have 3 days I can work on a book. I'm trying to get this one particular book done. And I said, I'm going to have Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, I work on a book. Now, Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm going to have to go scaring up parts for this awning. And the kid says, I'll take care of it. He said, what do you need to do? I showed him. He went out, got the bolts. You know what he did? The arms on my awning are silver. He brings me one that's white. He said they didn't have a silver one, so I brought you this one. That way, you'll at least have it on when you leave, and you can throw it away if you have to. You get the better one down the road. What a thinker. If he'd have told me they had a white one, I didn't bring it because it didn't match, and now I don't have one, I said, forget that. I said, we'll paint it silver. I'm a painter. So I can do this part. And we put it back on. But all the time he's running around, you know what I'm doing? I am at my computer, and I am hammering away. I can't tell you. You know what I got? I got 3 good work days in because of a Jonathan and a Himeas. And you young guys, look, don't say, well, you know, they just don't show me any respect. You don't deserve it. But you get out there and show yourself. Hey, these guys took off. They were chased by an army. They're up there hiding under the flax while the place is being searched. They're hiding in a well. They're hiding in a well. So they're hiding in a well while the place is being searched. And they send word out. And again, hey, somewhere down the line, somebody's giving these guys some respect, aren't they? They didn't have to have good, self-worth. They went out and earned it. And if you want to earn it, carry something, sweep something. Find somebody, some preacher, and say, I'll take care of that for you. And I know your church is wonderful for this. You guys are great. But these guys weren't fighting in the military. They didn't have a sword in their hand. But they carried the message. And David heard about it. And he escaped and lived and came back. And look how the guys who were not frontline combat guys did something that the frontline combat guys weren't in a position to do. And they were our troops too, weren't they? Now, I want you to know something. If you're here tonight and you're one of them guys that stood up and all you ever handled was a typewriter when you were in the military, on behalf of all the other guys who were in the military, thank you. I wasn't in, guys. But I'm telling you, look, if you took care of the medical stuff, if you took care of getting supplies out there, if you fixed the tank or the truck or the airplane, I'm telling you, you were needed. They say 10% of our military is combat and 90% support the 10. Then when we support our troops, are we just supporting the combat? Are we going to support just a tenth of them or all 100%? And you can't support somebody that you're killing. And you know what we do? We say, well, that guy, he's just in office. He's in the office and he's just with a typewriter. We don't care if he dies. He's not worthy of being defended. He's not worthy of being supported. I only mean the guys that are out there really doing something. I'm going to tell you something tonight. Every guy in Iraq that's in our military is doing something. You and I are the ones that aren't doing anything. Right? Let's support our troops. If you can't do anything, let's just not kill them. Let's just not mortar our own. Let's just not badmouth each other. Could I ask the pastors, the preachers that are here, I'm going to ask you to do something. You can't have this many men in one meeting that there isn't somebody else, another preacher here that you just don't like. Now, I don't care for whatever reason. I know you're right. But whatever reason, you don't like them. Nope, I'm not asking you to go out and have burgers with them because you'd probably end up in a fist fight. I'm not going to tell you need to go confess to them, I have not liked you very much. All that woman stuff, Can we hug now? No. Don't say a thing. Just look at them. And just remember this one thing. Think of don't try to think of anything good about them. Listen, don't try to think of anything, because you can't think of anything good about them anyway. Think of whatever makes them so despicable and unworthy of life. And say, and they're on my side. And I'm on their side. And if I get a chance to kill them, I'm going to not do that. I didn't say you got to say something good about them. I didn't say you got to help their ministry. Let's just try not to kill us. Let's just try not to kill us. And who knows, maybe the battle will be won by somebody that isn't even at this meeting. But it just happened to be somebody we didn't kill when we had the opportunity, who was on our side also. Father, thank you for loving us. I feel sorry for you, God. I feel sorry for you because you have us. And when I say us, I mean me. Lord God, you know me, and you know everything about me. Dear God, you could throw me out of this place and be justified, no doubt about it. And God, every one of us, we know unflattering things about each other. We may know bad things that are true. And I'm not talking about God covering sin, you know that. But even your book said that sometimes that love will look the other way on that sin. Not to allow somebody to continue some horrible lifestyle. But God, help us to support our troops. Help us to remember that we're supposed to be serving you in some capacity. And some more than others. And some out where they're getting their picture taken and they're getting the glory, but they're also getting the wounds. Help us to support our troops. Help us to support your troops. Help us not to kill each other. Help our wounded not to be killed by wounds inflicted by their own side. Help us not to follow that Muslim in blowing up our own people. Help us. You know how badly we need it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Let's take our hymnals and turn to number 393. Number 393, let's stand and sing.
Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love, at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. Take my voice and let me sing, always only for my King, always only for my King. Take my lips and let them be filled with messages for Thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my love, my God, I pour at Thy feet its treasure store. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee, ever only all for Thee.
How many of you got something tonight? Some great truths there. Some great truths. Brother Johnson, would you come up for a second? Brother Brian Johnson. In the spirit of what Brother Sal said this morning about Sunday school, and how many of you preachers remember I mentioned to you this morning, a lot of our growth over the past 20 years has been a result of kids that were born in this church, raised up through the ranks in our Sunday school, Awana, Master Club now, junior church, youth programs, and so forth. How many of you remember me saying a lot of our growth has been a result of those kids getting saved, marrying, staying in this church, and serving? How many of you remember that? All right, well, one of the key ingredients for that, Brother Johnson, would you come here for a second? I want to just point something out for you. That is not because of me. There are men and women in this church who have given themselves to help train these kids. All right, let's get some rest, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless you and good night.